the agenda. So item 12, report of the hearings panel on proposed Auckland Council Animal Management Bylaw.
Point of order,
Okay,
Mr.
we got
Chairman.
Councillor...
Point of order?
Oh, yes?
I should have declared a conflict of interest at the beginning, but on this item I was a member of the panel but took no part in any discussion or decision on cats because I'm the Auckland ambassador for the SPCA.
I'm sure you are. That's it. Okay, so we note that. I'm sure that's noted in the public record. Now we've got Councillor Bill. We had in there those who were members of it. Councillor Bill chaired it. Councillor Linda, Callum and member Wilcox. Councillor Bill.
Thank you, sir. First and foremost to councillors, it's a bit of a change from the Mayor's tabled LTP to animal management, but it still needs to be done and it's very important to many Aucklanders.
Perfect. For those councillors on them.
I would first of all like to thank Paul and Emma and their team for the work they put in, and also for the compliance staff. We ran this particular deliberation process in a fairly open manner and got good advice from our staff and some good examples from our compliance staff, so that was very helpful in informing the decisions that had to be taken. The Auckland Council had 18 separate different bylaws around this area of animal management, and we needed to consolidate it, as we have with all others, into a regional-wide bylaw. The proposed bylaw is intended to enable Aucklanders to own animals in a responsible manner and to be good neighbours. That's a pretty lofty aspiration, but it's one that we need to try and deliver. We don't want to make it rules and regulations over heavy, but we want to be able to give our compliance staff the support and guidance that is necessary. Minimum standards have been developed in collaboration with the stakeholders for the management of beekeeping and keeping of stock in urban areas and horse riding in public places. The proposed bylaw was consulted on using the special procedures, and submissions received in August and September last year. The public hearings and deliberations took place over 3 days in February and March. And I thank my fellow panel members for their advice, guidance and work on this area. After considering the submissions, the panel members recommended some amendments to the proposed bylaw to make it easier to graze stock on lifestyle blocks, to own chickens and ducks and geese in your own backyard, and to raise eggs on the quarter acre and smaller sections. The panel also recommended the staff report back to the Regulatory and Bylaws and Committee before the new bylaw becomes effective to enable pet days to happen without any compliance. And although the urban people probably don't really understand it, there's a great love and an increasing love of pets days, calf and pet days, and people bring along their cats and we even had one person bring along a pet opossum for Pete's sake. But people love it, and with the lifestyle blocks and the growing rural communities, the kids just get so much joy out of it. It's one of the great things to see. So we really want to enable that process. So it's going to be acting upon if there are any disputes or someone complaining about a barring lamb, to work with them in a collaborative fashion to make things come right. That brings me to the vexed problem of cat management. And no matter where you sit on this particular couch, there's a cat on either side of you. And you're never going to please everybody because it's impossible to do so. Whether you have a capture, neuter and release, or capture, neuter and adopt out and destroy those that aren't wanted, is a process that we need to consider going forward. And it's probably not applicable, in fact it is not applicable for this bylaw because it's a national problem. We need to have some guidelines from the government around where we go with this, whether it's a Gareth Morgan approach or a more sensitive approach is really in the hands of government. Perhaps we'll be working with them on that particular issues. In the meantime, we have some very valuable organisations that do work in our community to help alleviate some of the cat issues, and council staff will be continuing to work with those organisations in a proactive manner within budget, but to find some good results going forward. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be perfect because the varying opinions are vast and wild, but we still need to work with people to try and find some sort of single line of approach that is acceptable to the community in general. We've mentioned about the calf clubs to enable that. The other area of often potential contention is beekeeping. And we're supportive because we understand the scientific need for bees. But if you're Mr. Smith, whose car gets covered in bee excrement or his wife's washing line, it's a real issue for them. So again, it's about enabling our compliance staff to work with the beekeepers, work with any complainants to find the best practice management going forward. And there are ways and means to change and alter flight lines of bees. There's a proposal for minimum standards around the bees in all the environment, in the urban environments, and for horse riding in public places. Again, it's a matter of working with sensible laws to achieve sensible outcomes and taking local standards and aspirations into account. For the enforcement, it's about our compliance staff being engaged with the education and with the negotiation. And it's been well used to complaints and handling those complaints in a manner that does achieve a result but also has understanding for both sides of that particular coin. And Councillor Penrose had a good example where he had one neighbour who was a habitual complainant, and it really wasn't because that person next door had an animal that they didn't like. It was about that those two neighbours just didn't get along. So it puts our compliance staff in an invidious position where they often have to be the broker between feuding factions. So I really compliment them on their work and compliment them on the attitudes they're taking forward, which is about finding some collaboration, finding some common sense outcomes with best management practice. So to summarise, Mr. Mayor, I would just say again, thank you to our staff who did sterling work around this area. It might not be a big issue for all of Auckland, but it's a big issue for some of Auckland. So thank you.
Very good summary, Councillor Bill.
Yep.
Do I have so he moves, seconder please?
Yep.
Councillor Mike. Right, now, speakers please. Councillor Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I congratulate Councillor Cashmore and the councillors and the staff who worked on this bylaw. Knowing Councillor Cashmore, I'm not surprised that he appears to have dealt with these conflicting issues around animals in a very sensible, practical way. We have heard concerns from the people who care, the volunteers who care for stray cats in our city, that they are not entirely happy, and they have proposed Lonely Meow in particular, which has done marvellous work below the radar with little acknowledgement, valuable work, have made a last-minute plea for a look at option F. Could I ask through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Cashmore, what is the essential difference between what we're doing at the good work at Concourse Henderson and the full option F? Is there provision in the bylaw to enable enhanced cooperation with people like Lonely Meow?
I'll start and I'll let Paul or Emma give you some further information. The real issue around the cats is there was not sort of universal agreement with the agencies that are working with them, such as Lonely Meow and the other ones, about the best approach. And until we get that sort of guidelines cemented in a bit more of a straight line, and also work from the government to say this is going to be a national area that we need to work on, I would suggest that this particular animal management bylaw is not the appropriate methodology to put through something to solve the cat problem. And that's probably a piece of work that needs doing further down the track. But I'd like to invite, through you, Mr. Mayor, to ask Paul or Emma to give further information.
Right, thank you.
Through your worship, I'll just raise one point and then I'll hand over to Emma to add another point. And that mainly is to reinforce that what was being requested from the Lonely Meow Association was the provision of further cat management services to a similar level that you do for dogs. So that's kind of independent of the bylaw. The bylaw manages the nuisance behaviours, and this was a more of a proactive service. And I'll just hand over to Emma now to provide the details.
Right, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Although a region-wide cat management service was considered, it was not the recommended option because the council does actually receive a relatively low number of complaints with regards to nuisance from cats. Taking the figures from the Henderson shelter, as you've pointed to, Councillor Lee, extrapolate that for the region, that would actually cost, to set up the shelters, approximately $5 million with an annual cost of $1 million ongoing. And that would be funded largely through rates, which differs from the dog management approach as we have dog registration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Very good.
Can I
Councillor
just say,
Linda.
I have a sensitive situation with cat management in my own ward. I have a long-standing complainant, Mr. Nill, and I also have a very passionate supporter of the colony, in particular, Mr. Banks. And to try and sort out the differences is not easy, but and I can certainly appreciate how difficult it is sometimes for council staff. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor
Thank
Linda.
you.
Dog Banks.
And it was a pleasure to work on this committee and hear everybody's views. And I think in terms of the cat welfare, which probably brings up the most emotion, is that it is a vexed and divisive issue. And I think if you look at the whole issue of cat welfare, unless you had cat registration, you just couldn't fund it. And I doubt there seems to be, between the dog world and the cat world, a whole different view around how you manage the relationship, the human-animal relationship. So I don't know if we'll ever deal with that. So I do really support the chairman of the hearings panel, Councillor Cashmore, in the fact that we need to have a whole new strategy, a national strategy, though it doesn't preclude the fantastic work that the Lonely Meow Club do, because the difference at the end of the day is that they don't just release the cats back into the wild, into the never, to be colonies or whatever, which isn't the greatest outcome for a lot of the public, but they do work to rehome cats, and that seems to be a really good outcome. So that doesn't mean they can't do that. I think it's just that as a big bunch of volunteers, it's hard for them to keep funding that. And I think that's where, any councillor can support them in looking for other avenues of funding while we work out a national cats management strategy, somewhere in between dispatching them in a severe way or rehoming them or whatever comes up. But I do want to acknowledge Lonely Meow reaching out to us at this last minute, and they did make a good submission, but that's why I mentioned it. I don't want them to think that we've ignored their pleas. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other speakers, councillors? All right, well, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you.